Well, we will see the first test of the government's new multi-level employer bargaining. Workers in the early childhood sector want a significant increase, and this is the system they're going to use. Joining me live is Helen Gibbons, Early Education Director at the United Workers Union. Thanks very much for your time. So when we're talking about this change, can you just clarify exactly how this is going to work? You're seeking, I believe, a 25% increase. Would this theoretically apply to every worker on award levels across the country?
Our application that we're going to be lodging today will cover 65 employers and will cover 12,000 early educators all across the country. So this is a huge application that really demonstrates the breadth of the sector, from a small community provider down your street to the second largest provider in the country.
All right. So aged care was the very public one of a 15% increase. Why 25% for your sector?
There is an enormous crisis in early education with shortages all across the country, and we're finding that parents and children are unable to access long day care because there just aren't enough staff to care for those children. We asked early educators what would it take to encourage them to stay in the sector or to come back to the sector if they've left, and they made a very clear claim for a 25% pay increase. They're coming off an enormously low base. Early educators can be paid as little as $24 or $25 an hour. Even though they're qualified, they're professional, they're incredibly committed. If we want the very best and brightest to look after our young children, we need to start paying them like that.
Do you concede that's a pretty big increase? You could say everything you said just there, you could say pretty similarly. It's a different cohort, but similar things to say about aged care workers that have got 15%.
Aged care workers have had an incredible win in winning a 15% pay increase, and the Fair Work Commission has said that they might have more to say in relation to aged care workers, and they deserve every single cent of that. They do an incredibly hard job. We're going into this bargaining with a very clear wage claim for a 25% wage increase, and I'm sure the federal government, as a party to the tripartite negotiations, will also have a view, as will the employers. But what we're really got to do is focus on what will fix early education, because as a community, we can't afford to not have places available for little children and for their families.
In terms of who will ultimately pay, you mentioned the federal government being a part of this action. They're a direct provider, or they provide the subsidy within this sector. Have you had any discussions with them about whether they're willing to pay for the entire pay rise?
The tripartite negotiations, or the agreement, will really start to kick off in the next few weeks and months. We have been very clear that we want to see wages lift in early education, but we don't want to see parent fees lift in early education. It's already expensive. It needs to be affordable and accessible for all children and families. So we've been very clear with the federal government that the exciting part of these new laws is for genuine tripartite discussions between unions, employers, and the federal government as the funder of the sector.
Right. I mean, it is the funder of the sector, but obviously there's also the people that pay. You're saying if not parents, do centres pick up part of the bill, or is this purely the government? And if it is, have you had discussions? Have you had any sort of indication they might be willing to stump up the full increase?
We've been talking about a pay increase that is funded by the federal government for years. They are under no illusions that that's what we're going to be calling for. We've also had lots of discussions with the employers. It's really important that we have this really clear process in relation to genuine discussions around what wages and conditions should look like in early education going forward.
Right. So just to ask again, any sort of assurance, or is, about whether they'd pick up the tab? They did pick up aged care.
We would love for the federal government to come out and say really clearly that they will pay for a wage increase for early educators, and we made it really clear in our press conference today that we would like the confidence and the assurance that the federal government knows that they are going to have to fund the wage outcome. But we also know we've got some discussions and some negotiations to go. So we've got work to do, but We're very clear that the federal government needs to come prepared to pay a wage increase for early educators.
There you go. That's the test that's been set down. We're seeking to talk to the Minister this week. We'll see how we go. Helen, appreciate your time today. Thank you.